All right, let's roll, ladies and gentlemen. Let's welcome ECW legend Justin Credible. What's going on, bro?
What's going on, brother? How you doing? Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Anytime, man. But where can they find you on your social media platform?
You can hit me up. I mostly do Twitter and Instagram, and they are both at PJ Polaco. So check that out.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. It's not just good. It's just incredible.
Yes, it is, brother. Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah. You know, what really got you started into the wrestling business, man?
Man, I was just always such a fan of. I remember, and Jesus, this is going back to 1983. January 24, 1984, to be honest, was the day Hulk Hogan won the belt. And we used to get it on the local channel. I'm from Connecticut, so it was a New York channel. And I still had the old school black and white with the rabbit ears, because I'm a little older. I'm 49. And when I was, that kid tuning into that and seeing Hulk Hogan beat the Iron Sheik, I was like, what the hell is this? That was my first real introduction to pro wrestling. And I thought it was just so amazing. And, you kind of knew even from the beginning that it wasn't real, but it was just so cool. It was like a little boy's dream, the adrenaline, the characters, the fighting. It was just perfect mix for me. And, I just wanted to pursue that ever since I was a little kid.
I'm pretty sure when they watch wrestling, they have that envision. A lot of them have lived out the dream. Like you see a lot of guys like Edge who lived out the dream.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of guys that you were working with in the business, like Tommy Dreamer, who's still around, but just not quite he's more of a part-timer.
Yeah, for sure. And and even myself, this weekend, I was part of, I was a surprise in, GCW, the little indie promotion there that does like a lot of ECW stuff. They were in Hartford, and I came in and, did some stuff with them, which was amazing. And it was sold out, a good crowd at this theater we have. It's a big arena, or big club, I should say, the Webster Theater, sold out. And I did a surprise run in, and, the fans still remember. And that's the beauty of the internet, I guess, because I haven't been around in a minute, and they still remember through YouTube or the WWE network, all that cool stuff we did in ECW back in the 90s. So it's super dope.
Yeah, most noticeable is like when you were in ECW, like that's where you made your mark at. But was there like another promotion before you went to ECW?
You know what? Not really, man. I was in WWE very early. I started in '93 in the business, really. And in Connecticut, back then, there were, the internet wasn't around. There weren't a lot of independents. There were really still very much like outlaw shows. That's what we called independents back then. It was kind of away from mainstream promoters in the wrestling business. So I didn't know anybody like that. So one day I'd wrestled and trained in Calgary in '92, Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where the Hearts came from. And I went to their wrestling camp up there. And it was, it was like the frustration that like there's nothing here for me in Connecticut. So I went to a WWE, back then WWF house show, and I just went backstage, because back then if you said you were a wrestler and you looked the part, they just let you in. Security wasn't a thing like it is today. And I spoke to a couple of the agents / what they call producers today, Tony Gurria, who was a WWE Hall of Famer. And I told him, sir, I was, I'm a young man. I went up to Calgary last year. I trained with the Hart brothers, and Brett and Owen and his family. And I said, if I'm here, or, I have my gear, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to always say that you have your shit. If somebody no shows, you can fill in. And, he was nice enough to let me stay and watch the show from the back. And as I was leaving, I went to thank him. And I went all by myself, too. I didn't have any, like a crew of guys, just me. And he said, well, as a matter of fact, let me have your number. We're starting a new show in Manhattan called Monday Night Raw. We're going to need some extra talent, like jobbers and shit. And I was like, sure. And that's how I got my start in the WWE as a jobber, which went on to be Aldo Montoya from 95 to 97, which was my first big break.
Yeah, you were like the Portugal character.
Yeah, the Portuguese man of war for sure. Yeah, which was great though. I got to travel the world, make a little bit of money, and really learn the craft. Because I worked with everybody. It was so cool.
Yeah, my great uncle happens to be Portuguese, man.
Oh, really? Right on.
Yeah, he was like he was married to one of my aunts, and he just happened to be Portugal or something like that. So the way he talks is a different Spanish, but that dude was like, yeah, he was pretty fluid with different stuff in Spanish.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so then what led you to ECW after your WWF or WWF time?
Yeah, times were changing. It was like 97, I think. And it was definitely 97. Kevin and Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, who I was good friends with in WWF, they had just jumped to WCW. And, they had pretty big, they had pretty good stroke over there. They were in Bischoff's ear. And I was starting to come into myself, really. Like, I was starting to get really good. I'd worked hundreds of shows now for them over the years, house shows and stuff. So my experience level was growing. And I was like, man, I don't want to be, it's time for a change. Like Aldo was great for a learning experience, kind of taught me how to do shit, be on TV and whatnot. Now it's time to make a move. And I thought, wow, WCW, the NWO was exploding. Scott and Kevin could get me down there. They'd offered me, to go down there. But I still had, the problem was I still had another year on my contract with Vince, because every time they sign somebody, they sign you for 3 years. And so I was like, I went to Vince. I had a meeting with him up in Stamford, up at the offices and everything. And I was like, Vince, I really appreciate everything you've done for me, but I'm getting better. I just would really like to, I see that the WWE isn't going to do anything with me. I'd like my release. And he kind of knew why I was asking him, because he knew, obviously the thing that was going on, the Monday Night Wars, the thing with Scott and Kevin. And he's like, PJ, I can't let you go. He goes, it's not even about you going over there and hurting the business for me, but it just, the perception was so many people were jumping ship. He did not want another one of his talent to you know what I mean? That perception. Yeah. And what he did say was, we could send you to Memphis, Tennessee, to the USWA to learn how to work as a heel. And then we'll bring you back up and give you a different character, which was what they did back then. So I said, sure, I'll do that. What am I going to say? Right? He's not going to give me my release. So I go down to Memphis for about 6 weeks. I wrestled for Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler in the USWA as a heel, as promised and stuff. And the last day I was supposed to be there, ECW and USWA were doing a feud. So the last show I did in Memphis, Tommy Dreamer, Paul Heyman, Sandman, Rob Van Dam, Sabu, they were all down there. And Chris Candido, God rest his soul, was also there too. And he was like one of Paul's right-hand men at the time. And he's like, man, PJ, you're so good. We worked together in WWE. Let me talk to Paul. If you want to come in, we'll work something out. And I was like a little skeptical. I'm like, I don't know, man. He goes, trust me. He goes, the best move I ever made. Well, we got to talking and, things sounded great. And, Paul Heyman went to Vince personally and asked Vince, can PJ come and work for ECW? And Vince agreed. And that's how that happened.
Yeah. And then you had some good matches going into ECW, but
yes.
What was your best rivalry angle that you had in ECW so far?
The rivalry itself, I would imagine, would probably be Tommy Dreamer, because I did so much with Tommy. When his grandfather died, I interrupted the grandfather's 10-bell salute, which was Dreamer's idea. It was Dreamer's idea, but I interrupted the 10-bell salute, and just all the character stuff I did with Dreamer. It just felt so passionate, and he was the great baby face to my heel. So I would say that. But as far as matches, pure wrestling matches, I would certainly say myself and Jerry Lynn as well.
Oh yeah, sure. Jerry Lynn was very good. Like,
so good, dude. He was so good, dude. So good.
Yeah, but what led you to win the ECW title?
That was I only found out I was winning the belt, just so you know, literally like 3 or 4 matches into the show itself. Like, I had no idea what I was doing that night. What had happened was Mike Awesome. Remember Mike Awesome, right?
Oh yeah, he was incredibly gifted, but he could have been something special, but life was cut short from there. I mean,
yes, he was very special. He was so good, and he had the ECW heavyweight title.
Yep.
And in that time, through negotiations, because his contract was up, Paul somehow fucked it up, and Mike signed with WCW with the ECW title. Now, as you know, that's like that's bad, right?
That's like a slap in the face, because you're taking a title just like it.
That would destroy ECW, or at least the title. You know, it would destroy the lineage. So somehow, through everybody negotiating, they negotiated Mike Awesome would come to an ECW show and drop the belt to Taz, who was at that time a WWE contracted wrestler. That's when Taz had already wrestled Kurt Angle and was up there in WWE. So Taz beats Mike Awesome, does quick work of him, like 2-minute match, whatever. And then the following week, now Taz is the ECW champion, but still a WWE wrestler. And, you know, we got to get the belt off of Taz quick. So we go to 1 week, we go to the ECW arena, and Taz has a match against Tommy Dreamer. Good match, long match, whatever. Tommy wins. So, you know, it was Tommy's dream come true. He finished his journey to become the world champion, you know, all that shit. And all of a sudden, you know, that was my angle, my spot. Paul had for me was, you know, to go down to the ring and challenge Tommy right then, right there, almost like a cash into the Money in the Bank.
Yeah, kind of like that. It was like
but it wasn't really that. It was just me challenging Dreamer, and of course, the babyface could never refuse me, or you know that Tommy Dreamer, you know, and I beat him real quick, 1, 2, 3, and then so Tommy was like champion for 5 minutes or something, and then that's what happened, and I only found that out literally like half hour before I actually did it.
That was like wild. Yeah, that was like before you even had Money in the Bank. You just calling randomly a challenge. Like
yeah.
Usually a second match becomes a disadvantage for the opponent. It's like
an Iron Man. Yeah, of course. You know, it should. I mean, if that was real, dude, who could do that? You know, should.
I mean, it's just like disadvantage. But you know, this is an interesting question. You know, I've seen this angle before. I've seen this story where it happened a long time ago, but it was like an incident that was like ridiculous. Weren't you in the incident of the passenger of the plane from hell?
I was, yes.
What was it? What was it like from that situation?
It's one of those things where when it's happening, you don't even realize it's like a big deal. It seemed like normal enough. I was with the WWF, or I say WWF, but I really should, it was, you know, WWE, because that's what everybody calls it now. So I'll just say WWE. And we had done a pay-per-view in London, England.
Insurrection pay-per-view, right?
Yep, I believe so. Yep. And I was on it. Everybody on that show was on it. And Vince had chartered a plane, like our own private plane, to have all of us on it, because the pay-per-view was Saturday night in London. Now, London is 5 hours ahead. So with time and everything, we had to get back to New York pretty quickly, because we had Monday Night Raw. So we'd have Sunday off, Monday Night Raw live in New York City. So, you know, it's obviously very important that we get to TV, because TV goes on whether you're there or not. You know what I mean? That's live. So it's very imperative that all the wrestlers get back home. So Vince charters his own plane. So when he charters the plane, we get in, everything's fine. You know, we're all tired from the night before, right? From the pay-per-view. We get in, we're all just chilling. Vince had, in good faith, you know, it was a full service bar and amenities on the plane. That's not the problem. The problem became, well, there's some problems with the airport tower, whatever. Long story short, because of airplane delays and not taking off, we were stuck on the runway for 5 hours.
Damn.
So now you got, probably 60 or 70 WWE wrestlers, employees, production people, everybody on that plane, and as much booze as you want. And you're delayed, right? And you still have a 5-6 hour flight when it takes off to get to New York for Raw. Yeah. So, man, what do you do when you're bored and you're on a plane? It did, again, remind you, we don't have tablets yet.
You sleep, you try to sleep, or you drink or chill.
Right. Cell phones weren't really we had cell phones, but they were like flip phones. It's not like
flip
we had
phones or beepers.
Yeah, we didn't really have not everybody's on a computer or a tablet watching movies.
Yeah, there wasn't a thing then, yes.
So that started to turn into a party real quick, and then
like I heard JBL did some of those ribs, and those other wrestlers did too. It's like,
oh yeah, it was wild, dude. And I mean, it's all become, honestly, I've said this so many times, I don't even know what's real anymore.
Like it's hard to,
or my recollection of the story, because it was so long ago, but it was wild, man. It was, X-Pac cutting Michael Hayes' hair.
Oh, I heard about that one. He cut his hair for a prank.
Yeah. Only because Michael Hayes stepped out of line, and JBL had got color the night before. It was, still had a fresh wound, but it was covered, And Michael Hayes, while JBL was sleeping, went over and punched him and opened him up. So now JBL has a nice button-down shirt with, how he dresses.
Yeah,
professional, all bloodied and shit, and it was just, there was so much of that going on, dude. It was wild, just wild, wild shit.
It had to be a wild incident just to see that, but yeah. But when you made your return to WWF at the time, like in 2001, what led you into the X Factor faction?
That was the plan they had from day one. I really didn't know much. I had signed a contract with JR via email, and he didn't promise me. That's the thing, is I think people think when you sign a contract or you make an agreement with a promotion that you're going to get like this outline of you're going to do this, that, or the other. I signed a deal for money, and I had no idea what their intentions were, other than I'm going to be in a tag team with X-Pac, which was great. He's a good personal friend of mine to this day. We rode in the same circles with the Clique and all. So I thought, because they were so, if you remember correctly, WWF was so stacked in 2001. They had everybody, literally every. And think about this, man. WCW had also gone under. So now they got the remnants of that talent. ECW gone under. So imagine all that promotion into WWE or WWF, whatever. It was a lot. So I figured, well, me and Pac probably can't make it on the singles because they got Rock, Austin, Taker, Hunter, whatever. There's so many.
It was quite a lot. Like there was just too many. Booker T was there.
DDP, you're stacked. I could keep going on and on.
It was so damn stacked. Like they had to do the angle, like the invasion angle.
Yeah, it was crazy. So basically, I thought if we could be a heel tag team, we may be a real tag team. We may be able to find some success there. You know what I mean? And we did for a short period of time. They had us booked with Edge and Christian, the Hardys. Even APA.
Well, yeah.
So, it was good, but, again, like anything else, I think X-Pac got hurt and he had to leave to get his neck fixed. I think he had a broken neck or something. Not a broken neck, but like a chip something in his neck was broken. So then I went singles, and that's what kind of dissipated the tag team.
Yeah, and then you won hardcore championships from that time.
Right, but that's still, that's kind of bottom of the barrel, really,
Yeah, like jobber type thing. Like if you think about it, like the lower cards.
Right. And again, it was a sign of the times. There were so many guys and gals there. It was rough to have a spot. I was just lucky to be involved.
You had to be lucky. Yeah, you had to be lucky to be on it. There was guys.
So many guys weren't on the roster. So
yeah, quite a few. Buff Bagwell didn't even last too long on the roster when he had a match with Booker T. That was it.
No, because he was so bad. That's the thing. It was very competitive then. It was really, Vince didn't take no bullshit back in those days.
I mean, you were with the clique and that connection, so you had some part of it, right?
Yeah, a little bit of protection, but it's never what you think. You just have to do what you have to just be the best you can, and the only way you could ensure to have a job and to be, okay, is to just get over, man. Because that's one thing that will always solidify you in the wrestling business is getting over.
Yeah.
Then that's the people telling Vince who they want to see.
I mean, getting over having a spot at that time was something
very hard, and also I had a lot of misfortune and that's why I changed my look. Like they didn't want me wearing my jean shorts and t-shirt because it looked a little bit like Stone Cold, and I happen to be bald for real. Like I don't have hair. I'm really bald. So that was a strike. And even though I'm cool with Steve, I was cool with Steve back in the day. Still am cool with Steve. And it wasn't him; it was the office. So I changed my gear to tights, and I couldn't do my finishing move, the spinning tombstone, because Taker did the tombstone. So right away they took a lot of what Justin Credible was. Didn't let me have the Singapore cane. They took a lot of what Justin Credible was and turned it into I'm just another guy now with no mic time, no storyline. So of course you're going to get lost,
Yeah, and they even put you on some spot shows like on Sunday Night Heat and quite a few other shows like Velocity where you would have some of yours. Yeah, it was like low card matches.
Yeah, so it was it was what it was,
But didn't you have some hardcore matches with the likes of Hardcore Holly and quite a few other? I mean, not hardcore. Crash Holly too.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But what was it like working with Hardcore Holly? I heard he's pretty stiff.
I worked with him. I worked with him back when he was Bob Sparkplug Holly. The race car driver. Sparky Plug was his name. So him and I had. No, he was okay. I mean, he was snug. Don't get me wrong, but no more than like anybody else, like a Benoit. And I didn't mind working with Bob. Bob and I got along real great. So he just didn't like bullies. So he'd fuck up anybody that was a bully. And he could too.
But I guess in the Tough Enough incident, they called him a bully.
Well, in a way he was, but I think that was his defense mechanism.
Protecting the wrestling business. That's what
it is. And you had to back then. It was just a different animal,
So, like in ECW, what was it like working with New Jack if you ever had a match with him?
Oh, I've had plenty of matches with Jack. He was great. He was really cool. Again, I think Jack is one of those guys that if you're cool with him and if you know what you're doing and, he'll work with you. He never hurt me, not once. He brought out all the toys and the garbage can full of stuff. He was always good to me. And I had a lot of fun working with you, Jack. I really did.
It had to be just the respect for him to not step that line with you. But there was that incident that was going on, the Transmass incident, man.
Yeah.
That was insane.
Yeah, there's so much. I don't know what to believe on that. I was not there. I was not with ECW when that happened. But I can imagine I know what happened. And because, ECW was the school and the locker room were kind of run by guys like Taz, even Bubba Dudley and guys like that, Dreamer. But Dreamer wasn't one of those guys. But Taz and Bubba and other guys like that, I can't really remember who else was there, but they were very much into you got to pay your dues and, got to show respect. And I guess this kid, I don't remember his real name, but this kid, Mass Transit from Boston, was not really what he said he was. He was not a trained professional wrestler. He had no idea what he was doing. He thought this shit was kind of a joke. And I think Paul smelled it and saw it. And it's like, New Jack, just fuck him up. I think he was told to kind of, because that's what it was. If somebody came into our stomping ground and tried to somewhat be dishonest or disrespectful, and I think that's how Paul felt with this kid, because he had no idea what he was doing. And then the crucial mistake he made was asking New Jack, "Could you get color for me?" Which means blading for him, which is cutting him. And anytime I've ever done it, I've always done it myself. I would never allow anybody else to cut me. That was his first mistake, and New Jack kind of looked at him. He's like, "Okay, motherfucker," and just went on to, he did it to. And I don't agree with this at all. And I don't think Jack, God rest his soul, if he was still alive, would agree. He fucked up. Jack fucked up, and he butchered the kid. It was unnecessary. I understand the point he was trying to make. And I think Paulie was trying to make that point too, like create controversy within ECW. It just cost us a lot. It cost us a lot publicly, publicity-wise, and financially. But that's the kind of things that the lore, the legend that became ECW, that's what it was all about. And I think Paul was willing to roll the dice, as he did.
He was gambling out of it. And that's
big time, man. With, we were doing some wild shit, dude,
There was wild matches. Even with Bubba Ray, was he kind of like a good worker, or was he kind of a dude?
No, Bubba's a great worker. No, Bubba was very good. He's very talented,
He's gotten better over the years. Like, he went from
for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Dropped a little weight, but kind of became more of a tag team specialist, became a really good single star. It's like this guy knew how to talk on the mic, man.
Yeah, no, he's for sure good. He knows what he's doing. Very talented guy and smart, very smart guy.
Very smart. But did you ever have any matches with Mick Foley?
I did, but not in WWE or not in ECW.
But with WWE?
Yeah, I did. I think I could be wrong. You might want to look this up, but I think I'm right. I think he debuted against me. Mankind debuted against Aldo.
Oh, okay.
Because we talked about this. He did one of his one-man shows at a comedy club in Connecticut, and he saw me. I didn't announce myself that I was going to be there, and he saw me in the audience, and he abruptly calls me up on stage to share that story, which was wild. And there's pictures of it out there. I have some on my phone. But anyways, long story short, it was pretty cool. Pretty cool.
I mean, it had to be cool to work with a lot of wrestlers, but was there any other match you had with Stone Cold also? I mean, I can remember.
Oh, God, I worked with Steve so much. But I worked with Steve when he was the ringmaster, not necessarily Stone Cold.
Yeah, ringmaster.
Yeah, and I got to wrestle him quite a bit. So we had some really great times, and we became good friends because of it. I'd done his podcast a couple times, not the one that was that's with WWE today, not the Broken Skull one, but his old one.
Yeah,
the one before. I did 2 of those, and if you listen to those, you could, we go back a very long way. I'm very close.
I mean, you ever had any interaction with Jim Cornette or no?
Oh yeah, love Jim. I know he's a bit controversial in his ways today, but I, not to be a dick, but I kind of agree with some of the stuff on the wrestling side.
On the wrestling side of the business, way
for sure, yeah, man. I think when you're an old school cat, he's not lying. I mean,
he's speaking it like it is, like the way wrestling is. It's not exactly like for some fans to look into. Like when you watch the old school, it's basic stuff.
It's
don't do too much.
And I think with AEW, and I do a review show every Friday for Vince Russo and his podcast. I'm grateful for that. But like I've reviewed every single AEW Dynamite since it's been on air, literally every single one. And I'll tell you, it's gotten worse and worse where they just don't know what good wrestling is. I don't think they're capable of putting on a good pro wrestling program. And it's a shame because I want them to do good. Having another promotion with the kind of money they have and the resources means full-time employment for more people, right? Yeah. And that's what you want in this business. I just think they're not doing a great job of it.
Yeah, like I the only one I like on AEW is MJF. I think he's
done great for sure. Yeah, I love his stuff too.
Oh, great question by this guy, my boy Rudy. Great guest. CG question: how did you get along with Paul Heyman? Is he anything like you see on his on-screen persona?
I got along really good with Paul when I was in ECW. After I left ECW, he kind of ghosted all of us because he owed a lot of us a lot of money.
Oh yeah, I heard he bounced checks, right? He kind of bounced checks, and then he said he's going to go to California for some type of.
So yeah, for sure. I mean, he did bounce checks. He made good on most of them. But when we were both in WWE, he changed very much. But he is very much like what you see. What you see is what you get from Paul.
And he does, and I guess he does what he does. But as far as like being a manager, he's always been a really great manager.
Oh, he's one of the greats. He's one of the great performers of all time. He's certainly one of the great minds of all time. I mean, he was so right about so many things, especially with ECW. I mean, he thought. I mean, he knew ECW could do something because a lot of people don't remember this. I know for a fact they don't. In 1992, 1993, wrestling really coming out of the Hogan era, it became so cartoon. Everybody in the WWF was either like, Earthquake, Hillbilly Jim, like those ridiculous characters. You know what I mean? Those shitty bushwhackers, like, shitty gimmicks, real watered down pro wrestling. And if you looked at WCW or the NWA, whatever, they had started to go that route themselves. This is after Flair left and so forth. And, at that time in 92, 93, everybody was kind of in a bad place because the wrestling was so outdated. There was no new anything to pro wrestling. It was still very watered down, very old school kind of pro wrestling. And what Paul Heyman did, along with Todd Gordon, of course, was start a promotion in Philadelphia called at first Eastern Championship Wrestling, because we're in Philadelphia. And then slowly turned it into Extreme, where he got the idea from FMW in Japan. That's when the garbage matches started, the Extreme stuff over there. And he must have seen a tape or something, and he saw, holy shit, so he started to get guys that were looking to kind of break the mold of the WWF or WCW, because wrestling needed a change. It was ripe for a change. And then the more popular ECW, and then when it turned to Extreme Championship Wrestling, with all the talent, all the gimmicks, all the adult style wrestling, like people wanted something real, not just like, you know what I mean? Like some bullshit candy coated pro wrestling with Hulk Hogan on it.
Oh yeah.
Or somebody else, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And ECW just made it real. He put a great soundtrack of popular music to it. He had pretty women in skinny dresses and bikinis on. Like he made it rated R wrestling. The angles were real, the characters were real, and we just kicked ass.
The violence was real.
Yeah. And then we brought in Cactus at one point. We brought in Terry Funk. So the business was just, people were dying for an alternative, and that's what ECW provided in those times.
Yeah, it invited that type of style of wrestling, but I think if you look at that style of wrestling, ECW kind of got it from some other wrestling promotions like Puerto Rico, Japan.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
that type of style. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know for a fact he got it from FMW, Puerto Rico. I mean, Dusty Rhodes was doing that in the late 70s, early 80s. But nobody was focusing on that at the time. So it was almost like a resurgence of the hardcore style.
Yeah, that's what it was. You had the likes of Bruiser Brody, who was just a hardcore style wrestler. You had Abdullah the Butcher.
Yep, all those cats. Yeah, for sure.
Ooh, I think this is an interesting question. So how was it to work for Vince, and best WWE story you can tell?
It was great to work for Vince. I have a great relationship with Vince. Always did, always will. He was very, I remember when my father had a heart attack when I was Aldo on the road in 95, 96, and he called me at home. I was on the road. They sent me home to make sure, to go to the hospital to make sure everything was going to be all right. I didn't know. And Vince called me at home that day, again, pre-cell phone. But he called me on my house phone, caught me, and spoke to me. He's always been very kind. I mean, he's a businessman, but he's also a very compassionate man. And he's a loyal man. So I love working with Vince. I really do.
I mean, he's a businessman, but when it comes down to it, there's always those bosses that show that kindness, even if you don't notice it.
He's one of the boys, put it that way. And if you know what I mean, he's a good judge of character, and he's a man's man for sure. But if he likes you and respects you, you're going to be all right,
Yeah. What was it like working for Hunter Helmsley or Triple H at the time?
I didn't work for him ever.
Never did?
No, I was not. When he was in Power, I was not there. I mean, when he came in, I was there already. You know, I was there before him. So, you know, he came in as the young boy to the Clique. He was, you know,
could have been a nice match to have.
I worked with Hunter before.
Oh, okay.
But in TV matches as Aldo, which were good matches, but you know, nothing competitive. But you know, yeah, no, I like Hunter. I think he's done great for the business. He really is a student of this business, and he does good for it. I really believe he puts the best product out there that he can. I really believe that.
He builds up NXT and builds up really good talent.
Yeah, so. for sure, 100%.
Yeah, it's such a it's probably like the most interesting like group you guys got called the Clique, man. It got a lot of the controversial for the kayfabe thing.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it was, you know, blown out of proportion too. So, you know, wasn't all as bad as it sounded.
Yeah, but when you look back at your wrestling career, man, it's like, do you ever thought you could have did a lot more in the business, or you just felt like it is what it is?
It certainly is what it is. I felt like I could have done much more. I think because of the way the landscape changed. I mean, again, think about this. WWE has probably 50 guys full-time. ECW, I know for a fact, had about 30 or 40. WCW had way over all of that. I think they had like 80 or maybe even 100. You have, let's say, 250 full-time professional wrestlers in America.
Yeah.
Now Vince McMahon buys both companies.
That's
how many people? Like if it was corporate America, how many people lose jobs? Right?
A lot.
Because there's no spots to put all those people. It's not like one deserves it more than the other. And I was lucky to get a spot for a couple of years after that. That was the X Factor years. But it had gotten so competitive and so weird. You know, I didn't come back till 2005 for the One Night Stand and then the relaunch. So I did come back for that. So I got another contract in 2005 to 2007. You know, so but yeah, I wish it could have been better. And I think if things would have been different, my career would have definitely been different. But it was just, you know, you could think about it, but I don't know how much more I could have. I mean, there could have been some things I'd done differently.
I mean, what could you have done in TNA? I mean, you had a chance over there.
Oh, I went to TNA. I did great in TNA. But again, you know, Jerry Jarrett was an old-fashioned promoter. And I remember when I went to one of the TNA things, and one of the last appearances in TNA was Jerry Lynn and I had a huge, last man standing match. And it was an amazing match. I forgot what it got in the ratings, but it was like 4.5 stars, whatever. And Jerry and I were on before Jeff Jarrett for his NWA title match. And I remember Jerry Jarrett, Jeff's dad, being pissed. And he's like, well, if you can't follow him, don't put him on before you. Because we'd outshined the entire card. This match was so good. And neither one of us returned for a year after that. So it's like you almost have punishment for working better than the main eventer. You know what I mean? And that shit's real too. So sometimes you can't win, man.
Yeah, but I guess for Jerry Jarrett, I guess he wasn't that impressed with you.
He was impressed with me. He just wasn't impressed with his. The knock was to his son. You know what I mean? He couldn't follow us. You know, and then Jeff kind of did his best to bury us.
Yeah, but at least you had a good run in professional wrestling, so you went.
I went to Japan. I worked for All Japan, and I mean, I'm still doing it, man. Like I said, I was in GCW wrestling, which is to me the new ECW of the world. This past weekend in Hartford, Connecticut, to a standing O. So, 49 years old, still doing it, man. Still trying.
Still doing it at the highest level. I mean,
yes, sir.
Didn't you work at Walmart or no?
No, never worked at Walmart.
No, there was like a little article that was thrown out. Maybe it's false.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff you can't believe. I work as a cook right now at an Italian restaurant. I certainly have jobs, for sure, but never worked at Walmart. No.
I think Dave Meltzer threw you on blast for that shit.
Man, that's great information that he gets.
Yeah. But
who cares? But what are you supposed to fucking sell drugs for money?
I guess so. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes he throws in some stuff like, from what everybody's been up to nowadays, and they thought this, but you're cooking, you're still doing indie shows. And that's all that matters. You're still doing the business.
I don't know. We're not millionaires, dude. We're wrestlers. I don't know how people think we get paid, but you don't work, you don't get paid. So get to work,
Oh yeah. Yeah, before we end the show pretty soon, I guess Crazy Juice wants to ask this question. What was your best match ever?
Oh wow. I'll say 3 because I rate them equally and I honestly can't differentiate.
Okay.
I would say 1 was 1998 Heat Wave versus Jerry Lynn, one of the best pay-per-views of all time, not just ECW. You can ask the internet; they'll tell you, what people have said. And I think RVD headlined it, but it was me and Jerry Lynn, Heat Wave '98, or me and Sabu, Anarchy Rules '99, or me and Shane Douglas at the ECW arena right before he left for WCW. Those matches were so good, so amazing. To this day, they still hold up. Very proud of those. So.
Yeah, and it was a good work for what you did. I mean, ECW, you were considered one of those top guys out there. So you.
For sure, yeah, it was great. It was awesome, very good.
Yeah, for sure. But for all those good stories and for all those wrestlers, man, we just got to give a thank you for those memories, man. Watching,
of course, man.
As a kid watching ECW, then watching WCW, then watching WWF during my young days, man, I just remember those angles. I remember you kind of in between the angles where you were with the X Factor. There was the invasion angle.
Yeah.
You had some matches. I don't know what was the match you had, but you had a match. Wasn't it against Lance Storm or somebody else?
I think it might have been with Lance Storm.
It was you and Lance Storm or something. You guys were teaming up on an angle.
Against the Edge and Christian, I believe.
Edge and Christian.
I think it was. Yeah.
So wait, didn't you jump on Alliance because you were going with ECW, right?
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember that. And then X-Pac went against Billy Kidman on that angle too.
Yep, for sure. Yep.
I think that was one of the best pay-per-views of all time, in my opinion.
I thought so too. I thought they could have. That's the thing. They had so much potential with so many names. Just the invasion itself, it was okay, but man, that could have been one of the biggest things of all time, and they could have done so much better. Because if you really were to do it right, you would have had, Sting versus Austin. Goldberg versus Rock. I mean, you would have had basically you wanted to see WCW versus WWE, and we got a very watered down version of that. And ECW guys in the mix somewhere down there. We got a very if you were to book the super ultimate card of wrestling, you would have booked something like that. And WWE did have the opportunity to get those guys. They just didn't see it as much as the fans did of the value of what was going on. So.
Yeah, it's just it was a different era then, and it was too much talent. So yeah, but I thought
so much. I don't think they knew what to do.
Yeah, I just like how they build up the pay-per-view where they had the invasion war, the war, and all that stuff. It
sounded great, but if they really wanted to deliver, man, they should have negotiated with those other guys, man. Oh, that could have been something we talk about for the next 50 years.
Oh, dude, I have it on DVD. I have that invasion pay-per-view. It's been there since to this day. I still watch it every now and then.
Yeah, it's good shit. Very good shit.
But for your time, bro, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, man. Yeah, for sure, buddy. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your patience. And thank you for everybody listening and watching. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. For everybody else, thank you guys for tuning in. And hey, it wasn't just good. It was just incredible.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you.